right. I think we got that good. So welcome again to our webinar on Social Security. I think I know everyone on the Zoom meeting today, but just in case, my name is Ann McCabe and I run Curo Private Wealth here in Reston, Virginia. And there's a few reasons that we decided to hold a webinar today about Social Security. The first of which is because it can be a very confusing topic. And it also is a pretty important one. It's a pretty important decision to make for most of us who don't have pensions. This will be the only fixed income that we'll have in retirement. And even for folks who are fortunate enough to have a pension, you want to get the Social Security decision right. So that's one of the main reasons that we wanted to provide this education today. The other reason we think it's important is that there have been some big changes to Social Security rules in the recent years, and strategies that we used to be able to use that were really fun to use from a financial planning standpoint, we're not actually able to use those anymore. So wanted to bring you all up to speed on some of the big changes that we have seen in terms of how Social Security works. And the last reason is that because of COVID, Social Security offices are shut down right now. They're not open. And so we thought it was important to bring this information and education to our clients, especially at a time when you can't go to the Social Security office. So as a result of all of this, I invited one of my colleagues, Emily Dupree, here today. She was kind enough to do this presentation for us. And she's been with MFS Investments for 15 years. She's local here to the Virginia area, lives in Vienna with her family. And she spends a lot of time going around, I suppose virtually really now, not really going around anywhere, but virtually educating financial advisors and our clients on some really important topics, one of which is Social Security. So I'm going to hand it over to Emily, and thanks again, Emily, for joining us today. And I will make you the presenter and the host so that you can share your screen now. And I will mute myself.
I currently have it being, oh, let's try one more time. There we go, perfect. Thank you, awesome. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Ann, for having me. As Ann mentioned, I work actually for a money management firm, and my normal job is I just talk to financial advisors. We talk about what's happening in the market. But the second part of my job, which is by far my favorite, is I get to educate investors directly. And we always try to pick topics that are helpful to you. And obviously, as Ann mentioned, Social Security is one of the only guaranteed income streams we get in retirement. So you want to get it right. And she also hit it on the head that because of COVID, we can't go to the offices. And when I talk about Social Security, I always tell individuals, you really want to go in person if you have questions. It can be tricky online, and sometimes there are a lot of hold times when you're calling. So today, you're really stuck with either option. So what I want you to do is, if you have not gone online yet, make sure you go online and log into Social Security. There's a lot of information for you there. And most importantly, you'll get to see your current statements and your current estimated benefits. If you have questions, you are going to have to call. After this seminar, I will send Ann a link. The link is really important because what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to call the general 1-800 number. You will be on hold forever. The link I send, you can put your zip code in. That will give you the direct dial-in for your local Social Security office. That will cut down some of the hold time. The other thing to know is when you call Social Security, you don't ever want to call the first week of the month. It is the longest hold waits. And for whatever reason, there are less hold time if you call on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So I'll get her that information to make your experience a little bit easier. My whole goal today is you leave this webinar feeling much more comfortable and confident about your Social Security election. This piece will also be available for everybody on the call. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you have to know about Social Security is, when is your full retirement age? So we call this your FRA. That's the acronym you're going to hear in the industry. And if you look at this top gray bar on the screen, these are the only options for today's full retirement age. If you were born between 1943 and 54, your full retirement age is 66. if you were born between 1955 and 59, you're going to be 66 plus some months. Now, this is important because you're actually able to file for Social Security up to 3 months prior to your FRA date if you're choosing to file at FRA. So let's say I was born in 1956 and I'm 66 and 4 months. You want to make sure you're getting those extra months tagged on before you file. And then finally, after that, anybody born after 1960, your full retirement age is 67. So I actually have 2 young boys at home. Cullen is 9 and Lachlan is 7. As Social Security sits today, their full retirement age, believe it or not, is the same as mine, 67. So the next thing you want to know is, do you qualify for a retirement benefit? So a Social Security retirement benefit, to receive one, you have to have worked for 40 quarters. That's essentially 10 years of earned income paying into Social Security. The good news is it does not need to be consecutive. You can go in and out of the workforce as long as you hit your 40 quarters. Now that's calculated off of your 35 highest earning years. So if you do log into Social Security and you pull up your statement, as you look through your statement, you'll find a page giving you your entire earnings history. The IRS actually feeds their data directly to Social Security, and that's how they keep track of what your estimated benefit will be. Now, I'm going to skip forward for just a moment and I'll come right back. But to give you an idea of kind of the numbers that go into this, the maximums and the averages for Social Security benefits, today, the maximum is 142,800. So of those 35 earning years, if you average out on this number, this is the most you can make. So anything higher than 142,800, it doesn't matter. This is the highest average today. If you fall in this category, your guaranteed income stream at full retirement age today, the highest that they'll pay out is $3,148. So again, that's filing exactly at your FRA. That is the most you can make today at a monthly benefit for your retirement benefit. And I think that's a pretty good number. Unfortunately, that's not what the average person makes. If you go to the right-hand side from that number where it says average monthly benefit paid out, it's about half. So today, on average, what you'll receive is about $1,500 a month. Now, although that's a guaranteed income stream, as many of you know, Social Security is really meant to be part of a supplement to your retirement. It's really not meant to be the whole thing. And if you're on the call like myself and you live in the Northern Virginia area, I don't think $1,500 is going to be enough. That's why we work with Ann, and she helps us get that income stream higher. So why is the average so much more different than the max? Well, it actually has to do when people choose to file. So what we're going to look at now is what happens depending upon when you file for your retirement benefit. There are 2 graphs on the page. The one on the left, this is for those on the call that have a full retirement age of 66. And then the olive green on the right, that is those that have it at 67. We're just going to focus on that blue graph so I can walk you through just one age. You can always look back at the 67 if that's where you fall in your FRA. So on this blue graph on the left-hand side, you see the number 66 right here in the middle, and above that is a 0%. That essentially means if you file for Social Security at your full retirement age at 66, you're going to get no decrease and no increase in benefit. You're going to get exactly what it says on the top right-hand side of your benefit statement. Unfortunately, the average person today does not file at their full retirement age. They don't want to wait to 66. Today's baby boomer, on average, files at 62. 62 is the earliest you can file for a Social Security benefit. And if you look at this graph, the earlier you file, if you file prior to your FRA, you're actually going to get a reduction in benefit. So if you file at 62, you are locking in a permanent 25% reduction in benefit for the rest of your life. So why do people do this? Well, there's a group of people that can't afford not to. So they have to take it early. That's not going to be you on the call. You work with Ann, you've got a financial advisor. She's not going to let that happen to you. But the other group, there's 2 other things that tend to happen. One is, well, Emily, what if Social Security is not there for me? I don't trust this system. I want to file for this benefit. And I want it today as early as I can in case it's not there. So yes, Social Security is not going in the right direction from a benefit program as far as their funding, but I will tell you the program's not exactly difficult to fix. It's just super political. So what you'll see that will eventually happen is you're going to have to change some of the entitlements. They've already done things like that, like raising the age to 66 to 67. They've gotten rid of file and suspend. So they'll continue to do these minor tweaks to entitlements, and eventually they'll probably have to increase taxes. So when I say it's a political program to fix, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, you're right in the middle. Nobody wants to run saying, hey, we're going to raise your taxes, right? So we think politicians will wait till it's mission critical. Most likely you'll see more changes to entitlements, and you'll most likely see that age, that 67, which is now the highest FRA, that'll probably continue to go up. If you're on this call though and you're over age of 55, any benefit changes that they've made over the last years, they've grandfathered in 55. So please don't file early because you're afraid your benefit's not going to be there. It'll change on you. The other reason we see people file early is because they want to retire and they just assume I'm going to retire. I'll just file for my Social Security. That makes sense. And again, by doing that, you're locking in a reduced benefit. So what I ask you, instead of retiring and drawing your Social Security, this is when you talk to Ann and you review your financial planning again. We call it getting through your gap years. So let me give you an example. Let's say I want to retire at 63. We go over to the 63 column. And if I file for Social Security, I'm going to have a 20% reduction. So what I'll do is I would work with Ann and we'd look at my entire retirement investment accounts together. And we figure out, okay, can I live off my retirement investments, allowing my Social Security to grow at least to age 66 and maybe even longer. We call those getting through your gap years with your retirement income before turning on your Social Security. That will help stop any major reductions in benefit. So I always say, please don't file before 66. Talk to somebody first because there could be other options instead of having a negative reduction. Then there's the other side, right? So 66 to 70. Social Security will actually give you an 8% increase in benefit per year, all the way up to age 70. And 8% is pretty significant considering they're going to guarantee you this bump. Now, just like going from 62 to 66, I also want you to consider financial planning here. Folks talk about whether they're working or not, whether they need the money or not. But this side, you also want to think about family situation and longevity. Now, I'll focus on the family situation when we get into the spousal and survivor benefit, but I will touch on longevity now. So in order, if you file at 70, to break even on waiting those extra 4 years, the break even is about 10 years, okay? So if you do have some longevity in the family and you think you're gonna make it to your late 70s, early 80s, that is the break even. Anything after 80, you're actually getting extra benefit from the Social Security program. So that is really in a nutshell on how it works. It's very black and white when you're filing for your own benefit today. You can't file for 62 and one benefit and switch to another. When you file today, you are locked into that age benefit. So really make sure you're making the right decision. And again, it's all about financial planning. There are very few rules of thumb when it comes to Social Security. So I'm going to show you one more thing if you file before your full retirement age. So Social Security is really meant to be a retirement program. And what we found is you had people filing at 62 and continuing to work. So they were making money on both sides. And again, that was depleting the program. So in order to prevent this and have people truly try to wait to their FRA, they put in what's called a work and Social Security earnings test. So this applies to anybody that files before their full retirement age. If they continue to work and make earned income, if they make over $18,960 a year, every $2 over that number is $1 withheld from their Social Security check, as in they will not get their monthly check based on that number. Now, eventually it will be returned to you once you get your full retirement age, but you've already locked in a reduced benefit. If you're not going to get the money now, it doesn't make sense. So let me just give you a quick example on how that works. So let's pretend I filed for my Social Security before my FRA. I filed early, and I'm making $22,960, right? That's $4,000 over the earnings cap, okay? Well, if I'm 4,000 over, every 2 is $1 withheld. So that means $2,000 will be withheld from my Social Security. If I'm supposed to get $1,000 a month in my check, I literally will get nothing my first 2 months. So that's how that works, that earnings test. It's really important to know. And it not only affects those filing for their retirement, it also affects those filing for spousal and survivor benefit before their FRA. Now, good news is, once you file for your Social Security, if you are filing at FRA, the earnings test doesn't exist. So I was born on June 1st. If I file for Social Security June 1st of my 67th birthday, I can actually continue to work and make as much money as I want. They don't withhold anything after. It's only for those that file before. Okay, so quick recap. We've talked about figuring out when your full retirement age is, right? How it's calculated, and if you qualify. So you qualify by your 40 quarters, it's calculated off your 35 highest earning years. We talked about what happens to your estimated retirement benefit depending upon when you file, right? If you file at FRA, you get exactly what you should. If you file before, it'll be reduced. If you file after, you can maximize it. We're going to be very careful with our filing date, especially if we plan on continuing to work. All right, let's get to spousal. So spousal benefit, I get a lot of questions on. So the first thing to know with any Social Security benefit is you only ever get one. So you don't get one and then the other. It's always one, and it's whatever is higher, okay? The second thing to know is for spousal, there is no earnings requirement. You do not have to have worked a single day in your life to receive a spousal benefit. You just have to be married to somebody who is receiving a retirement benefit. Or if you're divorced, you have to prove at least 10 years of a previous marriage to that person to go on getting a spousal benefit. So let me give you a couple examples here. I am currently married to my husband, Patrick. Okay, let's say Patrick and I both work our entire lives, right? We're probably only going to take our own retirement benefits because that would be what's higher. In reality today, my husband, Patrick, has actually been a stay-at-home dad for the last 10 years. He has raised our boys, and he might go back into the workforce, but he may not. So for him, spousal may be the higher benefit. As long as he's married to me, he will have the option to take that spousal benefit. So a couple tricky things with spousal. In order for my husband, Patrick, to file for spousal, I have to be taking a retirement benefit. So he is older than me by 1 year. He can't file for spousal until I file for my own retirement benefits. You do have to watch ages. And in some cases, if you've got marriages where there's a big discrepancy in age, Social Security can be a big pain. If we were divorced, Patrick does not have to wait for me to file for his benefit. The Social Security Administration didn't want to get involved in exes withholding and not filing, so their ex-spouse couldn't get spousal. So if you're divorced, it doesn't matter. If you're married, you do have to wait. So here's how the calculation works. We're going to look at this graph up here. Again, we're seeing our blue, that's for your FRA of 66, and our green is FRA of 67. So let's go all the way out to 66. I'm just going to talk about the blue graphs. And you see 50%. So again, 66 is FRA. As long as my husband waits to his full retirement age to file for spousal, he can receive the most, which is 50% of whatever my FRA benefit is. So if my full retirement benefit, the age 66 or age 67 benefit, is $1,000 a month, when my husband Patrick files for spousal, he'll get $500 a month. So that's as simply as it works. It's based off of the FRA benefit only, and you can get up to 50%. If Patrick chooses to file before, you can see just like retirement benefit, his benefit is also reduced. If he files at 62, he'll only get 35% of my full retirement benefit. Again, if I'm using $1,000, in this case, he'll only get $350. So I remember we talked about file and suspend is gone. So it's very important to know that if Patrick chose to file for his own benefit at 62, and then he says, well, I think I want to switch to your spousal, Emily, he can't switch to the 66 number. Any benefit you file for from a spousal standpoint, you're actually locked in. So if he switches to spousal, it'll only be at 35%. So it's so important to get your benefit filing correct because they kind of closed all of the loopholes. That is spousal. It's very black or white. Again, it's whatever is highest. And if it is highest, again, just like a retirement benefit, you want to make sure you're choosing the right age to file to maximize what your family income stream will look like. Okay, after spousal, there is survivor. So survivor benefit is actually a little bit more fluid and they give you some more options. So survivor benefit, again, you're only getting one, it's whatever it's higher. We're looking at our blue graph and our green graph. This is age 67 and age 66 is the blue and 67 is the green. Let's go out to 66. If you filed for a benefit at your full retirement age, let's say Patrick filed for his spousal at 66, when I pass away, let's go see what happens to survivor. Your survivor benefit is based off of 100% of whatever the benefit I was getting. So if Patrick and I were married, I was taking $1,000 in that retirement benefit. Patrick was getting $500 in spousal. If I pass away, he will switch to my benefit. So now he'll get 100% of what I was getting. In this case, it was $1,000. Just like before, if he filed for any benefit prior or filed for survivor prior, right, he'd get that reduction in benefit. Now, remember I mentioned to you, it's important to look at your family dynamic in addition to financial planning when it comes to waiting till 70. Oftentimes, those choose to wait till 70 are not necessarily thinking about themselves, they're thinking about their spouse. So we find that higher income earners, and if you think about, and not to genderize at all, but if you think about the aging baby boomer population, the majority of those higher income earners were men, right? And oftentimes they were just choosing to pick Social Security based on themselves. And I call this my Uncle Joe scenario. So Uncle Joe gets ready to file for Social Security. He's married to my Aunt Jane in this scenario that I'm going to do. And he says, Emily, I'm filing at 62. I'm filing at 62 because nobody in my family has ever lived until their 70s. And he knows he's going to get that reduction, but he doesn't care because he's like, I don't have longevity on my side. Well, he files at 62. Survivor benefit is based off of the benefit you're receiving. It's not based off of the FRA like spousal. So he locks in a 25% reduction, and lo and behold, he dies at 68. My Aunt Jane lives until 95. She was receiving a survivor benefit based off of my uncle, which meant she was locked into a 25% reduction in benefit her entire life because he didn't think about the family before filing for the benefit. So it's really important to know that survivor, you can have a major impact on your spouse, especially if there's that big age gap. So if there are two of you and one of you is 10 years older than the other, you might want to wait longer, therefore ensuring if you are to pass away, you're giving that best and largest possible benefit. I know some of this can be confusing, and as Anne mentioned, if you want to walk through personal scenarios at a later date, we're happy to help. The last thing, though, I want to touch on with Survivor is there are switch-up options. So what's unique about Survivor is you can switch. So survivors have two options. Number one, you can file for your own retirement benefit as early as 62 and switch to your survivor benefit at full retirement age. So let's say Patrick passes away, I'm 62, I can file for my own retirement benefit and then switch to 100% of his at 66, or vice versa. As a survivor, you can file for the survivor benefit as early as 60. It will be reduced. You see, I'll get 71.5%, but then you can switch to your own benefit later. Most people wait till 70 to get that extra maximized benefit. So survivors may switch. Just remember, in those scenarios, you are filing for a benefit early. So the earnings test does apply. So a lot of times we walk through survivors with this. If you're still working, you might not want to go ahead and do that, but know the option is there. There is one final switch up I haven't covered. It's called restricted application. The reason why I haven't covered it is being phased out by age, and most people can't do it. I'm just going to give you the two scenarios you would need to be able to do this. If you do get all two, please call Anna after, we can walk you through it. So in order to do restricted application, you have to be born before January 1st, 1954. You have to be married, and you have to be within 4 years of age of your spouse. So January 1st, 1954, and married to somebody within 4 years of age. If those two scenarios are you, see us afterwards. If not, Everything I talked about is all you need to know about filing for Social Security. It is incredibly black and white of a program now. The unfortunate part is the fun things for Anne to do are taken away. But what it really means is financial planning is more important than ever when deciding upon Social Security. So I'll do a couple kind of extra things here for this program today. I will touch on divorce. I know that many people know people that have gone through divorce, and some of you may have gone through divorce. So divorce is actually, if you're married to somebody, right, I mentioned before, you can receive a benefit. For divorce, you have to prove 10 years. So they will ask for your marriage certificate and your divorce decree. If you prove 10 years of marriage, you are entitled to both spousal and survivor benefit. So here's how it works. I'm going to use myself and my husband again. Let's pretend my husband and I are married. We're married for at least 10 years. I'm taking a retirement benefit. My husband's taking a spousal benefit. If we get divorced, nothing changes. As long as we can prove 10 years of marriage, he can go on taking that spousal benefit from me. If there was 5 years of marriage and we get divorced, he has to stop taking that benefit. Or if he hasn't started, he cannot. It's got to be 10 years. If I get remarried, so if the person taking the retirement benefit remarries, nothing happens. My next spouse can take spousal. My ex Patrick can take the same spousal. So if the person taking the retirement benefit remarries, their second spouse is not negatively affected, given the fact that my ex is drawing off of the same benefit. So we're actually incredibly happy that Hollywood marriages don't last very long, because I'm pretty sure Social Security would have been bankrupt years ago. What does matter, though, is if Patrick gets remarried. So if you were the one taking a spousal or survivor benefit off of your ex, your divorced partner, and you get remarried, Social Security doesn't like that. So this is what happens. If you get remarried before age 60, upon marriage, you will forfeit your right to the benefit. So if you're currently taking one, it goes away. If you haven't taken one, you don't get it. So you will forfeit both your spousal and your survivor. You have to either take your own or wait 1 year to take your newly married partner's benefit. If you remarry after age 60, you can keep your survivor benefit. You will forfeit the spousal. This is really important for those that might have been married a long time ago. They got remarried to somebody later in life. If you find out your ex passes and you got remarried after 60, you can actually go claim their survivor benefit, which is probably the higher. So know these do exist. Final thing to muddy the waters, if your second marriage, so in the case of Patrick, if Patrick got remarried and he forfeited my benefit, if his second marriage ends, right, divorce, annulment, death, the only way to end a marriage, he can go back to my benefit and I won't even know. So if you're concerned about your ex or you've been divorced, know that Social Security is actually quite favorable when it comes to divorcee, and in most cases, nobody even knows they're having a benefit drawn off them. I don't know if anybody on the call is in a government program. I will also give you my See Me After. If you worked for STRS, you meant you were hired before 1984, I'm going to need you to see me afterwards. There's some sticky stuff with whether or not you'll receive a benefit. I think somebody might have just come off mute. So if you want to check your lines, make sure your lines are muted just to keep it quiet. Thank you so much. Okay, so if you're STRS, see me afterwards. Any other government employees, don't worry. Social Security has been fixed. If you work for STRS, offset, or FERS, you are paying into Social Security, so you will receive a benefit. My final one, and I bring this up all the time because I do have young kids. So Social Security is an incredibly archaic program. It was created, and although there's been minor tweaks along the way, there are many rules that have not been adjusted for today's life. And one of those is called the recent work test when it comes to disability. So if you become disabled before the age of 24 and you have not worked at least 1.5 years in a 3-year period, you will not get disability. So I want you to think about that. When Social Security was created, age 24 was like the 44. Of course, you worked your entire life, right? You've already worked a lot. It's not an issue. Fast forward to today, 24 is like the new 14. We treat people differently. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Your child might have played 3 sports, or you wanted them to do well in school. And many kids today don't get their first job, and certainly not a 1.5 years worth, until they've graduated college. And think about college, that's a pretty high risk time. So just know, if you're a parent or a grandparent, that it's really important that if you can get those early earning years in, and again, it's 1.5 in a 3-year, in the event that your child becomes disabled, you will be covered by Social Security. So I'm going to stop there. I know that was a lot. This entire presentation, I will send to Anne, as well as those great links to make things easier for you when you're calling Social Security. So why don't we stop there and open it up for questions if you want.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. That was great. I'm actually going to kick us off with a question. So everyone else on the line, if you want to start noodling the question that you would like to ask. I also email, so if it's easier for you to email the question, you can do that, and at curoprivatewealth.com. But we did get a question from a client that I wanted to ask you, Emily. So I will just read the question. My wife, age 62, and I, age 63, each paid into Social Security throughout our careers and have retired, but have not yet turned on Social Security. Our plan is for me to wait until I'm 70 to turn on Social Security, since I am the higher wage earner. We plan to turn on my wife's Social Security now to create an additional income stream. Can I begin to receive spousal benefits now without affecting my future, age 70, Social Security income? What do we need to consider?
Great question. So in this case, both of you will probably have a negative repercussion if you're not careful with how you do this. So if you choose, the person that was choosing to wait till 70 to file for their own benefit, if you file for spousal at 62, 63, 64, anytime before 70, you are forever locked into that age. So that'll immediately stop you from filing for your own benefit later. So you don't want to do that. The second repercussion would be for your spouse. If they file now for that extra income stream at 62 for their own benefit, they're also locked into that benefit, right? So if I file at 62 and you plan on waiting till 70, right, I still will only get 35% of your full retirement age benefit as a spousal. And if you were to pass, I would only ever get 81% of your age 70 benefit. So unfortunately, in this case, if any of you were to file any benefit before your FRA, there will be a reduction. So you'll really have to do the math to figure out what makes sense for the entire family there. I like the idea of splitting the difference. We do see that done, but oftentimes it's one takes it at 66 and the other takes it at 70, and that gets rid of that reduction. Again, I don't know your scenario. I don't know if you need the money to live on. That's something you can talk about with Anne and figure out what may make sense. Great question.
Hey, Anne, this is Donna Bowling. So if we took that same scenario, but they didn't take the spousal, so the one took it at 62, the other one, so the higher income earner didn't take it until 70. If the higher income earner passed away, the one that took it at 62 would be able to go and get the 100% of survivor though, right?
They would not. So you would still be stuck at 62, which would be 81%. Because whenever you file for any benefit, you are locked into that benefit.
Okay, but would they be locked in? Oh, so they'd be 82% of the 81% of the higher income earner.
That's correct.
So their benefit would still probably be better.
So you'd be 81% of whatever the age 70 benefit was.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Emily, this is Achini. This question is for my late brother. He passed away when last year when he was 61, and he has paid into Social Security or an income more than 10 years. And what it is he split his time. Part of the year here in the US and part of the year is in Thailand, because he's fortunate can do that. he married, but he never claimed his wife on the income taxes. That's one thing, and he never claimed his daughter either, for whatever reason. Um, and he right now, and so wife doesn't have Social Security. Uh, what we're trying to do, in fact, we had contacted the lawyer, and the lawyer said that she can apply to come in the US because he has some property in the US and she need to come and inherit that. We have applied for her to come in as a widow. Uh, and talking about Social Security here, this year is the only year that he can pay Social Security, pay in. Not much each year that he pay in. But anyway, when you're talking about 35 highest earnings, how do you calculate that to get? I just want to know, what would he get? $500, $700, or what is that? You talk about the maximum. Is there a minimum that one would get?
So there is no minimum. There's a lot of questions there to unpack. So let me take a couple of them at a time. So just let's start with the calculation. It's your 35 highest earning years, and 0 years do count as well. So I do have some questions from people that say, well, what happens if I get laid off? Or what happens if I decide to retire at 60 and not file 66? Will that impact my benefits? The answer is it may. So in addition, I'll send a link to Anne. There's actually a calculator you can play around with what if scenarios. If you have your Social Security statement, in this case, you'll have to get an access to his. It'll have all of his earning years. It'll give you the estimate today, and then you can play around with some extra. So going back to the death and the marriage. So depends on the countries. There is reciprocity between the United States and Canada, but in your case, I do not believe there is reciprocity. So you would have to be a resident of the United States to receive his survivor benefit. Because they are legally married, and because he paid into the United States, technically would be able to get, as long as she is here and paying taxes in the US, a survivor benefit. Even though he died before he filed, they're really good to survivor. So if you pass away before you file for any benefit, I should say here, it'll automatically bump up to his full retirement age benefit. So if I'm 61 and I die, and my benefit at 66 is supposed to be $1,000, if I die at 61, it bumps my survivor benefit to whatever my age, my full retirement benefit would have been.
Okay, in this case here,
he's 60. This is a little bit complicated. So let's just, for the sake of the group, if you don't mind, we'll take it off of Anne because it's a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Good questions, but a lot of them in one, and I want to make sure I get you the right information.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Phoebe has one. Go ahead.
I do. Is there any penalty for filing for Social Security after your 3-month eligibility in any year, like say 66? Case in point, if your birthday's on January 1st, 2021, and you filed June 30th, 2021, is there any penalty? If there is a penalty, can you file in January of 2022 if that's the birth month?
No, great question. So if we're talking about Medicare, the answer is if you miss your window, yes, penalty. Social Security, it's actually a positive the longer you wait. So they will factor in whatever extra increase you get depending upon how late you file, right? So once I hit my FRA, that's the number. And if I wait 3 months, 6 months, they'll add a little bit more because I'm technically maximizing my benefit at that point. So there would be no penalty for that. And if you do make a mistake, just so you all know, you do have 12 months to fix your decision. So if you said, I got to file at 62 and you're like, I think I'm going to go back to work, I don't really think that was a good idea. It's not easy to fix. You have to figure out all the taxes that were paid out, but you do have up to 12 months to reverse your filing if you chose not to. That's just something else to think about.
Hey, Emily, I got a question emailed. So 2 scenarios here. I'm 62, husband is 70. I'm taking Social Security at age 62. If he passes first, do I get both my Social Security and his survivor benefit?
Nope, you only get one, and it's whatever's higher. So in the case of this, the way it'll probably look like on your statement is you'll get whatever your 62 benefit was. And if his was substantially higher, they'll add on the amount to your benefit to make it the number that you're supposed to get. So it almost looks like you're getting 2 benefits in your statement, but it's really the one number.
Okay. And next question is, I'm taking Social Security at my full retirement age. Husband is 70. He passes away. Will I get one or both Social Security checks?
So same question, it's whatever is higher. So just the one.
Yeah, just the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions?
And I'll send a ton of follow-up stuff so you'll have it. But hopefully this makes you feel a little bit more clear. And I'll promise you, as we go forward, Social Security is going to continue to cut out some of the fun and interesting things, and it's going to be really black and white.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. So Emily, do you mind making me the host again? I just have a closing slide with our contact information in case.
Just ask one quick question: is when do you think the offices are going to open back up for Social Security? I think that's what.
I have no clue, unfortunately.
Okay.
And they'll have to also decide, is it going to be state-based? Is the government going to say, well, no one can? My good friend works for Social Security, and one thing they have found is actually they've been able to more efficiently answer questions in a timely manner via phone than they were ever doing so in person. So I think they'll eventually get some better hybrid action out of it. We'll see.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you, Emily. That was really, really helpful. And as we said, if you have specific questions about your situation, we're happy to take those offline and address them. It can be pretty complicated, but also, as Emily mentioned, a lot of the loopholes have been closed, so it is straightforward. Just a couple of things before we leave. I do have a note of everyone who attended, but there are a couple of people I don't recognize your name, or it just shows up as your phone number or iPhone. So if you don't receive a follow-up from me before, let's just say Tuesday of next week, if you haven't heard from me with the follow-up of the links that Emily mentioned and the presentation, please reach out to me. My email, which I didn't put on the slide, my apologies. My email is ann@curoprivatewealth.com, ann@curoprivatewealth.com. So reach out to me. I will proactively send you all the links and the presentation, but if you don't hear from me, it's just that I don't have your contact information. So also, please let me know what you thought of this webinar today. This is the first one that we're doing that's based on a financial planning topic. So if you enjoyed it, please let us know. If you have any feedback, please let me know. Also, if you are interested in having us do webinars in the future, on different topics, I'd love to hear from you. If this was helpful, valuable, we'd love to continue doing them, but I need your feedback and your input for that. So thank you again so much for taking the time. If we do more of these in the future, I promise we'll start on time and end on time so you can get back to your busy days, but we appreciate you taking time and joining us, and we look forward to being in touch very soon. So thanks again, Emily.
Thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.